So the vernal equinox was the time of promise. It was the time of resurrection. It was the time when the earth was broken and the little seeds came out. It was the time where the old mystics in Europe celebrated the feast of the mustard seed, the little seed that was very small, the heart, which was from some time to be a great tree that would shade the universe. So the beginning of the new opportunity for regeneration was the resurrection of the sun god at the vernal equinox. Now this was carried over into theology and brought into contact with many different legends and myths in all parts of the world. But in every one of these different systems, the actual sense of the matter was that the human being in his own growth passes from conception to birth, and in passing from conception to birth fulfills the first part of his journey. He then is born, and the birth, the physical birth, is the beginning of the journey through the chambers of initiation. It is at that point that the entity begins to unfold the potential. Here the small twig of acacia is revealed. It is shown that the life is there, that in the winter it appeared to die, but it was not dead, it sleepeth, and it comes forth again. And in the life of every individual, when sorrow, misery, destruction, evil things plague the life, make it seem very difficult, by quiet contemplation of realities, we all discover that there is in us the germ of an immortality that cannot perish. But that when we really desire and start a conscious journey towards truth, at that moment the little seed within ourselves begins to build the inner life for us. The seed becomes the tree of the soul, as it was called by Bhemi. So we can start out on all the problems and processes of life. And we are not shown what to do or told exactly. We have the experience of our ancestors. We have three great directives to help us. One of these directives is observation, to see what is happening in the world. Another directive is experimentation, to try a thing and see if it works. The third one is tradition, the gift we receive as a legacy from our ancestors, who have passed through all kinds of experiences and problems. If we are able to use these three instruments, they will guide us, or guide the sun, from the vernal equinox to the summer solstice. It will then bring into play all of the labors of life, for it is from the time of the planting to the time of the harvest that the individual must guard his properties, must sacrifice his time and energy to protect the crop which he has planted. The farmer, therefore, is most busy in those months in which it is necessary for him to prepare for the harvest that is to come. Therefore, in life, young people must prepare for the harvest of the years. Those starting out must build for the future. And in each instance, the great supreme power to achieve that which is most necessary or most desired lies in the dedication of the individual to the principles of his religion. Actually, therefore, the ancients didn't have religions just the way we have them. They didn't have so much formalization. Most religions of antiquity were religions of joy. There were very few sorrows in the religions of ancient peoples because they believed so firmly in the reality of good that they even accepted troubles and tragedies as testings of good, of means of strengthening. Adversity tempers the steel of the human soul, making it strong in emergencies. And the old peoples of the worlds of long ago accepted many of the problems that we reject simply because they realized they were part of life. So in this part of the testimony, we go back again to the temples, and we find that the disciples take these initiatory vows and begin the journey through the three primary degrees of initiation. And the sun does the same thing in the three primary degrees between the testing of the soul and the entry of the cycle, the sun cycle, into Capricorn. Here we find three definite efforts made to prepare the individual for the three great steps that he must take later. Here he is supposed to conquer the three parts of himself which are subject to the stress of initiation: the body, the heart, and the mind. But the body, he must discipline the flesh until it becomes serviceable as an instrument, to give it all care that is necessary. No legitimate system of ancient religion ever tormented or tortured the body for purification. It was simplified. All the luxuries might be eliminated, but it was necessary to protect the body because it was the contact with the world of experience, and without that, the great trip could not be successfully made. After the body was obedient to the will and to the heart, then the second step was the purification of the emotions and the heart. Here the individual had to generate a new discipline upon the emotional life of himself. He must purify his affections. He must control his appetites. He must have all kinds of hope and a positive and constructive emotions. He must gradually overcome criticism. He must cure the causes of neuroses and things of this nature. So that actually the second step in the three steps was to gain control of all pressures which arise through illusion and fantasy within the life of the person. Then the third step consisted of the purification of the mind. The mind, so that it could be no longer a problem to the life of the person. The purification of thought included, of course, complete overcoming of selfishness, self-interest, pride, all of the arrogances, and all of the worldly values which many people cling to so tenaciously. In other words, the mind must be detached from everything which will not survive after the body dies. We are to take with us in the mind only that which is not dependent upon the body, but is dependent upon the insight of the individual himself. Now, having accomplished these three labors over these three signs, the individual has become gradually cleared of some of the problems which we face today, because in these recent times we have lost contact almost entirely with this concept. We are no longer in a position to understand just what all this adds up to. But one thing we do know is that gradually so-called progress has destroyed the integrity of millions and millions of people. We are no longer able or willing to use the body and the physical embodiment for the improvement of nature, for the strengthening of character, for the extensions of knowledge, and through the birth and rebirth within ourselves of those elements and factors and parts which are necessary to our perfection. We have therefore gradually changed our Father's house into a place of merchandise. We have taken it and we have disfigured the entire purpose of evolution. We have failed to recognize the real reason for the gift of the sacred year. For a year is a period set aside for the growth of beings. It has something to do every year in repeating and repeating the evidence of what is necessary. The year becomes the great teacher of each person if that person will be observant of what happens during the months of that year. He will also gradually come to recognize that the loss of the memory of the past at Cancer, when he enters the gates of oblivion, this loss is restored to him at Capricorn. And as he brings his life into perfect order, the whole pattern of his life will be revealed again. He will remember, whereas previously he forgot. Previously he forgot his divinity and remembered only the humanity that was being born in him. At Capricorn, He is no longer locked into the memory of material things, but restores his memory of the divine world from which he came. So the year is a very great symbol of things, a symbol that we all could do something about. If, however, we imagine for a moment that this whole pattern of this astrotheology does have a meaning that is more profound than we realize, we know that it was protected in one way or another, so that the human being who was not prepared to receive it would not be likely to gain a knowledge which would damage him. But now everything has more or less changed. The old systems have gone away. There are still traces of them, and some very good older systems still function. But for the most part, people today have no consideration for the consequences of action, and they have no realization of indebtedness to the universe, a debt which must be paid by conduct. While this condition remains as it is, we have some of the great tragedies of life. At some time in the remote past, for example, science, which was in the hands of a very exclusive group, not exclusive in the sense of snobbish, but exclusive in the sense of knowing, informed, and morally incorruptible. This knowledge was placed in the keeping of persons who had already forsworn all personal advantage, who had already forsworn any action for profit that was contrary to principle, and had accepted the obligation that everything that man discovers must be brought to the altar of God. Now, as a result of this type of disagreement, discourtesy at the moment, we can take a little look at science. Here we have probably one of the most valuable instruments the world has ever been given, an instrument founded in the great triad of mathematics, astronomy, and music. Science which has developed itself in many, many ways and has given us a great number of very pleasant privileges and has made life easier for millions of people, and in this respect has gained our confidence. But we begin to notice something. We notice that the scientist has not taken the obligations that were given in the ancient mysteries. He has not forsworn fame. He has not declared that he will invent only that which will serve good. He does not permit his secrets to be carried out if he is properly informed, if they will bring damage or injury to any other living thing. So what is happening? We have a scientific world which has given us much to be grateful for, but might sometime give us that which will extinguish all the good that science has ever given. This is the type of thing that was of great concern to the ancients, that they will prevent the abuse of the greater knowledge that gradually comes to the human being. This greater knowledge was therefore protected by the rites of initiation, the basic rites of 3 degrees, by means of which it was possible for the person, representing again the embodiment of the sun, to become morally responsible. So in the first degree of the ancient rites were given the first primary purifications. Purification in the mystery system was only symbolized by baptism, because the real purification was not given by water. It was given by the divine power of deity itself. But in this first step, the mind, the heart, and the body were cleansed of selfishness and self-interest. The individual became as a little child, seeking truth, realizing that the things around him which he has assumed to be truth are not necessarily true. Many things that we believe are not so. Many things that we disbelieve will ultimately be proven to be true. And in this mystery of uncertainties, it is very much to our advantage to place certain disciplines upon our own attitudes. We may not know yet why we should do it, or how we should make these applications, but that something has to happen inside the individual before it is safe to bestow upon him the wisdom of his race is more or less obvious. There is a great body of wisdom, and there is a great race of people who have found it, built it, created systems for the perpetuation of it, but have never applied it to their own lives. They have never done those things in themselves which can make them safe custodians of the future. In the ancient mystery rites, the Pythagoreans, for example, the master told the disciples very definitely that every disciple who went forth to teach in his turn must do everything possible to find a successor. This successor must be a person whom he has instructed, or has found to be adequately instructed. And only to the person who already has earned the right can the master bestow the mantle of his leadership. And if by any chance he passes out of this life without finding a disciple that is worthy, that is itself part of the necessary lesson. Therefore, to pass on any knowledge in which there is a power to injure, until a person has proven that he is no longer capable of injuring, anything else is dangerous. And it was this kind of ethics of building knowledge into a qualified group that we have known in ancient rites. Now, some people hold these ancient rites to be snobbish, selfish, and that these leaders have intentionally concealed truth because they wanted to govern other people or wanted to be masters over slaves. History has no strength for that support at all. There is no effort to recognize, or no opportunity to prove, or no way of proving that those who truly possess great knowledge were the ones who were the cause of trouble. The ones who are the cause of trouble are those who want to resist knowledge and gain authority by allowing people to be less than they should be. Therefore, that which wishes to be popular, first of all, makes a virtue out of things that are not true. And as a result of that, everyone is worse off. Now, in the initiation rites as they were given, the first degree is that of purification. The second degree is that of service. The first degree, the individual tries to clean the inside of his own cup. The second degree, he is dedicated to the service of some need or some person in his environment or for whom he has responsibility. A servant, in this sense of the word, may go out and become a leader of peoples in the right direction, may become a clergyman or a priest, or also an instructor, a teacher, a guide to other people. Or, in the same spirit and in the same light, he may serve only in his own house. He may serve his family. He may serve relatives who are ill. He will guard and protect his children. He will sacrifice his own profit and his own pleasure to the security of his family. He will be unselfish in his use of possessions, gentle and kindly and forbearing in his dealings with those around him. This is the simple sign. One individual may go out and rule a country. The other may stay home and rule himself and his family justly, lovingly, and wisely. Both are fulfilling the same requirement. Both are therefore servants of principles greater than those of ordinary commitments. After that comes the third step, in which the veil of the temple is opened to allow the professed person to begin to gain the full meaning of what he has gone through. In the third step, the individual receives that amount of instruction that is necessary for him at the moment given. He is then given the keys to use certain knowledge which was previously denied him. Now, in the idea that this knowledge comes simply from another person is not quite true either. The actual fact is that if the person is purified in his inner life, dedicated to the needs of others, the next thing that he needs will be revealed to him by his own conduct. He will discover that which he needs next because he needs it. But if he is not ready for it, he seeks for it in vain. And the idea that he can find something he doesn't deserve is not supported in the old systems. It is that he must deserve before the truth can be given to him. And if he gains what appears to be truth without deserving it, it will ultimately end in deceit and destruction. So those were the three steps that the average person has to follow, just as the sun has to follow. It goes from its birth to its point of greatest restoring and resurrecting power. It passes from there to the time when it goes to harvest, and then it goes into the silence of winter. Now, what is the silence of winter in relationship to this mystery cycle? Is it really an evil thing? Not according to the old rites, it isn't. Winter might be considered is the great Sabbath. It is the time of rest. It is the time in which all things which have passed through experience are rewarded by rest and repose. Winter is the time of peacefulness within. It is the time where the individual no longer has to labor, but has to rest for a time before he goes forth on another cycle. In other words, in the terms of the men and women of the desert, the winter is the caravanserai, the place of rest and repose, where the individual who has completed the cycle of life has an opportunity to prepare for further life. But the ancients held that under that heading also came what was termed digestion. This is an alchemical term that is very interesting and has great significance for us. Digestion means that having passed through a series of experiences, it is necessary for the individual to summarize what he has accomplished. It is necessary to transform an experience into an awakening of inner value. The individual has had a life with many problems. He has had many different decisions to make. And in the Pythagorean discipline of retrospection, he goes back over the years of his life to find out what he has really learned, to know what mistakes he has made, and also how he corrected those that he discovered. He finds out how the weaknesses of his own character are still holding him back. He discovers where little germs of self-centeredness have prevented certain magnificent facts from being manifested fully to him. In